It was one of those afternoons when the city seemed to breathe with its own rhythm. Cars rushed past, people walked quickly with eyes glued to their phones, and delivery boys rode through the traffic with bags strapped to their backs, racing against time. Among them was Jaden, a young delivery boy, dark-skinned, lean, his eyes filled with both weariness and determination. Every delivery meant a few extra coins, money that could help him pay rent, buy food, and maybe, just maybe, chase the dream he had buried deep within his heart. Jaden wasn't just any delivery boy. Behind his tired smile lay a past no one could guess. He had once stood on podiums, held trophies high, and felt the roar of the crowd chanting his name. But life is cruel. Fate had stripped him of glory and forced him into survival mode. Now, his hands that once gripped the steering wheel of racing cars clutched the handlebars of a worn-out delivery bike. On that day, destiny had other plans. At the intersection near the city's grand shopping plaza, a sudden commotion caught Jaden's eye. A girl, dressed in an elegant white dress, gold earrings catching the sunlight, collapsed on the scorching pavement. People screamed, cars honked, but nobody rushed to help. They stood frozen, murmuring in fear, whispering that maybe it wasn't safe, maybe someone else would take responsibility. Jaden didn't think. He couldn't. He threw his bike to the ground and sprinted toward her. His heart pounded not from fear, but from instinct. When he reached her, he realized it was Amelia Sinclair, the daughter of one of the richest businessmen in the city. Her face was pale, lips trembling, breath shallow. The world knew her for her wealth, her beauty, and her arrogance. But right now, she looked fragile, human, and desperately in need of help. "Somebody call an ambulance," Jaden shouted, his voice raw. But the crowd only circled wider, murmuring and recording videos on their phones. No one moved closer. No one wanted to risk being blamed if things went wrong. Jaden clenched his jaw. He knew he couldn't wait. Every second mattered. He leaned over her, placed his hands on her chest, and began CPR. His palms pressed rhythmically. His breath filled her lungs with air, and sweat rolled down his forehead. "Come on. Breathe. Please breathe," he whispered desperately. His delivery uniform was stained, his voice cracked, but his determination never wavered. He refused to let her slip away. Minutes felt like hours. His arms burned from the effort, but he didn't stop. Then, suddenly, Amelia gasped. Her body jolted slightly as her chest rose with air. Her eyelids fluttered open, confusion clouding her gaze. The crowd gasped. A murmur ran through the onlookers. "She's alive! He saved her!" someone whispered. Jaden let out a shaky breath of relief, tears stinging his eyes. He gently helped her sit up, his voice trembling. "You're okay. You're safe now. Just breathe slowly." Amelia blinked at him, still disoriented, her delicate fingers clutching at his sleeve. For a brief moment, her proud mask slipped away and her eyes met his, eyes that held no greed, no desire for her wealth, only genuine concern. In that single gaze, something unexplainable passed between them. A spark, a silent connection, written by fate. The ambulance finally arrived, its sirens screaming through the air. Paramedics rushed to her side, pushing Jaden away gently. They lifted Amelia onto a stretcher, checking her pulse, her breathing, her vitals. Yet, even as they carried her into the ambulance, her eyes searched the crowd, searching for him. And when she found him, standing there with his delivery bag slung over his shoulder, she held his gaze for a second longer than anyone noticed. Jaden stood still, chest heaving, sweat dripping, watching as the ambulance doors closed. The crowd slowly dispersed, their curiosity satisfied. Life in the city resumed its rhythm. But Jaden couldn't move. He stared at the spot where she had collapsed, his mind replaying the moment when her life had almost slipped away in his hands. He thought of walking away, climbing back onto his bike, and finishing his delivery shift as if nothing had happened. After all, he was just a delivery boy. She was a rich girl, far beyond his world. Their paths would never cross again, or so he thought. But fate doesn't work that way. Sometimes, one heartbeat can change two lives forever. That night, Jaden sat alone in his small rented room. The walls were cracked, the fan squeaked with every turn, and the smell of gasoline lingered on his clothes. He replayed the afternoon over and over in his head. He remembered her pale face, the warmth of her hand gripping his sleeve, and the way her eyes, filled with both fear and gratitude, had looked at him as though he was the only person in the world who mattered. For the first time in years, Jaden felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly, but something close. Something that whispered that maybe his life wasn't just about broken dreams and endless deliveries. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a story waiting to be written for him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a grand mansion surrounded by glittering chandeliers and silent servants, Amelia sat in her room staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her family fussed over her health, doctors prescribed rest, but her mind wasn't on any of that. She kept replaying the moment when her heart had stopped and then started again, because of him. She didn't even know his name. All she remembered were his eyes, kind yet determined, strong yet gentle, and the way he had fought to bring her back to life. Her world had always been filled with people who pretended to care, people who clung to her for her wealth, people who never saw her as just a girl. But today, for the first time, someone had looked at her not as Amelia Sinclair the heiress, but as a human being who needed saving, and that person was a delivery boy. As Amelia lay in bed, her heart whispered a vow. I have to find him, because sometimes the richest hearts are the ones that have nothing. The night after the accident, Amelia Sinclair barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crowd circling her chest tightening, her breath slipping away. And then she saw him, the boy who refused to let her die. It wasn't just that he saved her, it was how he saved her. With every push against her chest, every breath he gave, he poured his entire soul into keeping her alive. That image carved itself into her memory like fire on stone. By morning, Amelia knew she couldn't just forget him. She didn't even know his name, but her heart wouldn't rest until she found the delivery boy who had brought her back to life. The Sinclair family mansion was buzzing with activity the next day. Her father, Edward Sinclair, a steel-eyed billionaire with a reputation for being ruthless in business, had summoned private doctors, bodyguards, and even a handful of journalists to ensure the story of Amelia's collapse would never reach the press. To him, family was image, and image was everything. Amelia, he said sternly as he entered her room, his expensive suit sharp, his voice cold. You're resting today. I don't want you thinking about anything but recovery. Tomorrow you'll attend the business gala with me, and we'll put all of this behind us. Amelia looked at him, her lips pressed into a thin line. I almost died yesterday, Father. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Her father didn't blink. It means you were careless. You skipped breakfast, fainted in public, and embarrassed the Sinclair name. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Her chest tightened with frustration, but she had grown up under his shadow long enough to know that her words were useless. Edward Sinclair only cared about profits, shareholders, and appearances. Love was a language he had never spoken. Amelia lowered her gaze, pretending to agree, but in her heart, she was burning with a new determination. If her father wouldn't acknowledge the boy who had saved her, she would. That afternoon, Amelia called her driver and ordered him to retrace the roads near the plaza where she had fainted. For hours, they drove through the bustling streets, asking shopkeepers, delivery stations, and even strangers if they knew of a young black delivery boy who worked in the area. Finally, luck favored her. At a small, dimly lit delivery office tucked between two cafes, she heard his name for the first time. You mean Jaden? The manager said, raising a brow. Yeah, he works for us. Good kid, always on time. Struggles a lot, though, keeps to himself. Amelia's heart skipped. Can I see him? The manager shook his head. He's out on deliveries, but if you wait, he'll be back before sundown. So, she waited, and when Jaden finally returned, sweat dripping from his brow, helmet tucked under his arm, his tired eyes froze the moment they landed on her. The girl from yesterday. The girl whose life he had saved. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken memories of that desperate moment on the pavement. Amelia broke the silence first. Jaden, right? His brows furrowed slightly. How do you know my name? I asked, she admitted softly. I had to find you. Jaden blinked, shifting uncomfortably under her gaze. He wasn't used to being looked at like that, with admiration, with gratitude. Most people saw him as just another delivery boy, nothing more. You didn't have to, he murmured, setting his helmet down. I just did what anyone should have done. Amelia shook her head firmly. No, nobody else did. Only you. If you hadn't been there, I wouldn't be alive right now. I owe you everything. Jaden looked away, his throat tightening. He wasn't used to gratitude. Life had taught him that Favors came with prices, and debts were chains. But when he looked back at her, her eyes were shining, not with pity, but with sincerity. I want to repay you, she continued. Not with money, don't misunderstand, but with an opportunity. My family owns a racing club. It's exclusive, prestigious, but I want you there. You'll work as a mechanic. Jayden froze. Her words cut into him deeper than she realized. A mechanic? In a racing club? It was like dangling a piece of his broken dream in front of him. His hands remembered the feel of engines, the rhythm of machines, the roar of the track. But those days were gone. He had buried them under deliveries and bills. I can't, he said hoarsely. That's not my world anymore. Amelia's heart ached at the quiet pain in his voice. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Jayden, you gave me my life back. Let me give you yours, please. He stared at her, caught between fear and longing. She didn't know his past, didn't know that he had once been a champion who lost everything. But somehow, her words reached the part of him he thought was dead. The racer inside him, the fighter who once believed he could conquer the world. A week later, Jayden found himself standing outside the Sinclair Racing Club. The building loomed tall, its glass walls gleaming under the sunlight. Inside, the sounds of engines revving echoed like a heartbeat. Wealthy young racers walked past in designer jackets, their cars lined up like beasts waiting to roar. Jayden felt out of place in his faded jeans and work boots, his calloused hands clutching the strap of his worn-out bag. Amelia met him at the entrance, her smile warm. You came. He gave a half shrug, still not sure why. Because you belong here, she said softly, even if you don't believe it yet. She led him inside, introducing him as the new mechanic. Some of the racers scoffed, whispering about the delivery boy working in their elite club, but Jayden ignored them. His eyes were fixed on the machines, sleek, powerful, hungry for speed. He touched one of the cars, running his fingers along its hood, and for the first time in years, he felt alive. Amelia watched him quietly, her heart swelling. She didn't know his full story, but she knew this. The boy who saved her life was meant for more than food deliveries. He belonged on the track, among engines and speed, and she would make sure he found his way back. That night, as Jayden wiped grease from his hands after his first day at the club, he looked at Amelia and finally whispered, "Thank you." She smiled. "No, Jayden, thank you." Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning. Fate had tied their lives together with invisible threads, and the road ahead would lead them to both triumph and heartbreak. The Sinclair Racing Club quickly became Jayden's second home. At first, he kept his head low, working quietly on engines, tightening bolts, checking fuel lines, and wiping grease from his hands. To everyone else, he was just a delivery boy turned mechanic. Someone hired because Amelia Sinclair had taken a strange liking to him. But machines don't lie. They recognize the hands of someone who truly understands them, and little by little, Jayden's touch began to reveal itself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the club emptied out, Jayden stayed behind in the garage. He leaned over a car with the hood open, listening closely as he started the engine. To an ordinary mechanic, it would have sounded fine, but Jayden heard the tiniest flaw, a faint misfire, a rhythm just slightly off. He adjusted a screw, tweaked the fuel intake, and the car purred like a predator ready to strike. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. It wasn't just an engine, it was music. The kind of music he used to live for. Amelia, who had returned to pick up her forgotten bag, stood quietly at the doorway, watching him. She had seen many mechanics before, men with experience, men with arrogance. But Jayden was different. He didn't just fix cars, he felt them, as though the machine's heart was beating in sync with his own. "Jayden," she called softly, startling him. He quickly shut off the engine, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to stay late." Amelia stepped closer, curiosity shining in her eyes. "You weren't just fixing it, you were listening, like you could hear something nobody else could." Jayden wiped his hands with a rag, avoiding her gaze. "Engines speak if you know how to listen. Most people only hear noise, but every sound tells a story, when it's healthy, when it's weak, when it's about to give up." There was something in his voice, an old fire that flickered just for a second before he buried it again. Amelia tilted her head, studying him. "You've done this before," she said quietly. Jaden froze. His shoulders tensed. For a moment, it looked as though he would deny it, but Amelia's gaze was patient, steady, refusing to let him hide. Finally, he sighed. "Yeah, I've done this before." That night, sitting on the hood of a car with grease still on his hands, Jaden finally spoke of his past. "I wasn't always a delivery boy," he said, his voice low. 3 years ago, I was a racer. Not just any racer, I was a champion. 3 titles, back to back." Amelia's eyes widened. You were a champion?" Jaden nodded slowly, his gaze distant as memories flooded back. "When I was on the track, it felt like flying, like the world disappeared and it was just me, the car, and the wind. People chanted my name. I had sponsors, fans, everything." His lips curved into a bitter smile. "And then, it was gone." "What happened?" Amelia asked softly. Jaden's jaw tightened. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling, as though the words themselves were heavy. "My mom got sick," he said finally. "Hospital bills piled up. Sponsors pulled out when I couldn't keep racing full time. I tried to juggle both, but life doesn't wait. One mistake on the track cost me everything. The team dropped me. My mom..." He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "She didn't make it. And when she was gone, so was I. All I had left was debt. So, yeah, I quit. Sold everything. Became a delivery boy to survive." Amelia's heart ached. She saw the pain etched into every line of his face, the weight he carried alone. He wasn't just a boy who saved her life. He was a man who had lost everything and still stood tall. "Jaden," she whispered, her eyes shining, "you didn't quit. Life pushed you down. But champions, they never truly disappear." Her words hit him like a spark against cold ashes. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of the fire that once drove him, but he shook his head, pushing it away. "Those days are gone," he muttered. "I can't go back." Amelia didn't argue. She simply smiled softly and said, "Maybe you can't go back, but you can move forward." The next few weeks changed everything. Jaden worked in the garage, and word spread quickly among the racers. The delivery boy wasn't just fixing cars, he was perfecting them. Engines ran smoother, cars performed faster, and problems that baffled other mechanics were solved in minutes under Jaden's hands. One afternoon, a racer named Derek approached him with folded arms. Derek was known for his arrogance, the kind of man who only trusted money and fame. "Hey, delivery boy," he sneered. "I heard you think you're some kind of car whisperer. My engine's been giving trouble for weeks. Nobody can fix it. Think you can?" Jaden didn't rise to the insult. He simply nodded, slid under the hood, and within minutes found the issue. "Loose timing belt," he said calmly, tightening it with swift precision. "You were seconds away from blowing your engine mid-race." Derek's smirk faltered as the car roared back to life perfectly. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire. "He fixed it that fast? Who is this guy?" "He's not just a mechanic." That night, alone in his small room, Jaden stared at the ceiling. The sound of engines, the feel of speed, the rhythm of racing, it was all rushing back to him. He had buried his past, but Amelia's belief in him was digging it up again. He remembered his mother's words, spoken years ago when she watched him race for the first time. "Jaden, you were born for this. Don't ever let anyone dim your light." His throat tightened. He had let life dim his light, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. One weekend, Amelia invited him to the track itself, not to fix cars, but to watch the racers in action. The crowd roared as engines screamed down the circuit, tires skidding, smoke rising. Jaden stood at the edge, his hands gripping the railing, his body trembling with every turn. He could feel it, the rush, the adrenaline, the hunger. It was in his blood, calling to him louder than ever. Amelia glanced at him, a knowing smile on her lips. "Your place isn't out here watching, Jaden. It's in there, racing." He didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. That night, long after everyone had gone home, Jaden sat alone in one of the cars. He gripped at the steering wheel, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to dream again. The racer within him had never died. He had only been sleeping, and Amelia had just woken him up. But fate is cruel, and while the spark of hope had returned, the storm of heartbreak was waiting on the horizon.